guys, welcome back to my channel. In March, I read 12 books. These are, I think, all of the books. And I'll be telling you a little bit about the books themselves and what I thought about them. So with the books that I finished in March, this makes 29 books, which puts me almost on track for my 10 book per month goal. My public number goal is to read 120 books in 2025. And I'm very excited that I am on track to meet that. I have a lot of books that I am currently reading. So even though these are the books that I finished, I also have some books on the go. And what's even more is that I found some fantastic things to enjoy, some things to learn from, and also, just making my way through some of the challenges that I have given myself. So I'm just really excited about my reading achievements this year. They feel like achievements. Maybe to you they're not. Maybe they are. Indulge me, please. So I'd love to hear from you what you've been reading, what you've been loving, share recommendations. And of course, as you watch this video, let me know if you've read any of these books and if you have similar or different thoughts than I did. First book that I finished in March was When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is a thriller set in a Brooklyn neighborhood where Black owners of these beautiful historic brownstones are disappearing, and it seems poised for an overnight gentrification. At the center of the novel is a Black woman who's trying to hold on to her mother's house and at the same time organizing a historic tour of the neighborhood to highlight the accomplishments of African Americans. But she's also trying to figure out if any of the white folks who are now in her neighborhood can be trusted. This was my first time reading anything from this author and I really enjoyed it. I know Alyssa Cole writes across multiple genres, so I'm going to be looking out for more books from her. Let me know if you've read this or anything else from this author, if you have recommendations for me as what to pick up next. Symposium is Muriel Sparks' characteristic writing about complicated young women. At the center of this story is a young woman named Margaret who seems like maybe a B-class British socialite. We meet her when she's interacting with a group of couples at a dinner party. And the conversation is about whether or not Margaret is a gold digger because she's just married a young man who is the heir to a fortune. And a lot of the couples who are at this dinner party are older, and so they know this young man's mother. So they're trying to figure out if Margaret is as innocent as she's presenting herself, and if so, how could she have nabbed this eligible bachelor? So it's left up to the reader to judge whether or not these older folks are just prejudiced against youth or someone who's not from their inner circle. At the same time, we're also reading about some suspicious deaths and whether or not Margaret is involved, and to figure out if everything is related and how it is. I love that this is Muriel Sparks' literary take on genre fiction, her exploring a mystery suspense with a literary twist. I think that her writing is characteristically comical and witty, but the resolution is a little open-ended. It might be a little ambiguous for some readers, but I enjoyed it because I really like this author. The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Society is an epistolary novel by Marianne Schaffer and Annie Barrows. This one is a letter exchange that starts between a British journalist after the end of World War II and corresponding with people on the Guernsey Island in the English Channel. It starts because she sold a book that she used to own to a used bookstore, and it contained her name and address, and someone finds her book in this used bookstore and starts sending her letters. And over the course of a very short time, she develops a really close relationship with this entire community. The storytelling is very well done. The book itself is smart, it's heartwarming, and it contains some very horrendous revelations about war. There's a romance or several, and there are lots of examples of finding family. I really enjoyed this. This may even be a perfect book. Let me know if you've read this one. A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is James Joyce's autofiction and coming-of-age story. He's growing up in Ireland in a working-class home. He goes to a religious boarding school, and so this book is his social and religious and political and sexual awakening. It includes a lot of religious conversations as he's hearing sermons in his school environment, but also observing how these religious leaders, how they interact with people who are lower down on the hierarchy than they are. I love the authenticity of the boarding school experience as well as the religious ponderings, but I could see how this would not be a book for everyone just because of the religious content, but I liked it. Foster by Claire Keegan is a novella about a young Irish girl who, when her parents are about to have another baby, her father takes her to go spend some time with a family in a rural farming environment. And she doesn't know these people, but they know of her. They are some kind of distant relatives. But the story is about her communication with this newfound family, how she relates to people who don't know her, and also about the secrets that they all learn about each other's lives. Ultimately, because she is thriving in this new environment, it becomes a discussion of whether or not she should stay with this unrelated family or return to the family of her origins. So despite it being a really short story, I found it to be quite moving, and I enjoyed the discussion about what makes a family. In general, I like strong, quiet characters who communicate their love for people by what they do rather than what they say. So this was definitely a book for me, and I'd recommend it to you as well. Twist by Colin McCann was gifted to me by the publisher, so thank you Penguin Random House for having gifted me this complimentary copy. The story is about two Irishmen who are not in Ireland. One is a journalist who's looking for his next big story, and so his editor sends him to South Africa to meet up with a fellow Irishman who works as an operator on one of these boats that go out into the ocean to fix these underwater cables. In reading this book, I learned, because I didn't realize that, we still rely on these underwater cables to carry communication between continental divides. I thought it was all in the satellite. I thought it was all in the cloud. Who knew? Maybe you did. But this book is about people trying to bridge communication externally, but having difficulty communicating with the people who are supposed to be closest to them, like their family members, sometimes separated by physical distance, sometimes separated because of choices that we've made. So the story is about these broken channels of communication, how they can disturb market trades and weather reports and news reports, but just general interactions between people. So the book contains a discussion about climate change and how humans can impact natural systems, and there's a little bit of a nod to other famous Irish writers and their books. So there's a little bit of a Heart of Darkness retelling, as well as a Waiting to Godot by Samuel Beckett inclusion, and I really love the literary commentary that this book makes. So I loved it. I hope you will too if you pick it up. Thank you again to the publishers for having gifted me this one. Charlie Hustle, The Rise and Fall of Pete Rose and the Last Glory Days of Baseball was a book that I read to judge the BookTube prize. So this is a biography of someone who starts off as a physically small kid and who almost drops out of high school, but who goes on to become a very dominant player in baseball, where he played with the Cincinnati Reds, and there was even a point where he was simultaneously playing and managing the team. And because the book is not just about his rise, it's also about his fall, it also traces the decline of his career and his fall from grace when his professional career devolves into gambling allegations and what it meant for his legacy as a dominant athlete even afterwards. So I really enjoyed how the author Keith O'Brien spoke about the history surrounding this player, but also about history itself. So showing that sports is not just about the players, it's more about the game or something like that. In any case, I really like this. In fact, it was one of my top books for the BookTube prize round. If you haven't already watched my video where I discuss these books, go check that out if you want to hear more of my thoughts on this or the other books that I read to judge the prize. I read Cher, the Memoir, Part 1, about the global icon, Cher. This, like it says, is the first of her memoir series, and in this one she's tracing the beginning of her family origins, her start, but also her mother's start in show business. Also talks about meeting Sonny Bono when she's 16 and he's 27. There's an 11-year age gap between them, which I guess when you're older it doesn't matter as much, but when she's 16 and he's 27, it's a lot. This one talks about the beginning of her career, how she had to overcome certain hurdles, like her natural tendency to sing in a lower register, and overcoming that to become the dominant vocalist that she still is. And she also talks about how she has used her celebrity status for political causes, like the PETA movement, and endorsing and supporting political candidates. I really like that. So I really like this. I found it to be really well written, very immersive, very engaging, and I will definitely be picking up the next memoir in the series when it comes out. Weather by Jenny Ophel is about a grad school dropout who continues to work on her university campus. So she's approached by her former mentor to help her work on this podcast that she's producing. So it's an End of the World podcast, and Liz's job is to respond to the comments that have been coming in. So she gets caught up in these discussions that range from apocalyptic predictions to current conspiracies. Meanwhile, her day-to-day life and her family interactions are going crazy. I love the kind of choppy vignette style of the writing, and I felt like the author gave us an opportunity to explore a lot of topics in a very short book, and I like that. Zenzele, A Letter for My Daughter by Jane Ozipo Maraire is told in epistolary format. It is about a Zimbabwean mother writing down letters for posterity to her daughter who is about to travel to the United States for college. In this series of letters, this mother showcases the beauty and wealth of African background, her African tradition and roots, but she's also giving her daughter her blessing and her advice on how to interact with the wider world. I really love this because it reminds me of this quote where they say a parent's job is to give their child roots as well as wings, and I thought that proverb was perfectly represented in this short book. 3 Shades of Blue, subtitled Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Bill Evans, and the Lost Empire of Cool by James Kaplan is another book that I read in order to judge the BookTube prize. This is an origin story of that beautiful jazz era of the 1950s, highlighting the stories of some of these great musicians, exploring the mechanics that went into the production of the music, whether from the composition or how the music was laid down on these tracks. but also some of the challenges that almost ended things before they began. So the author gives us some of the nitty-gritty of the drug addiction that plagued a lot of these musicians, as well as the discrimination that they faced, and also the uncertainty of the gig lifestyle. Overall, I really enjoyed the rich tone of this book and the respect that the author pays to each one of these players. I think that this was a book that was bigger than just the music and the musicians. It was also about a snapshot of this time in history, and I just really love everything that this book taught me and brought to me. So highly recommend it. If you haven't already heard about it, or if you haven't already read it, pick it up. And finally, I read Running While Black, subtitled Finding Freedom in a Sport That Wasn't Built for Us by Alice Mariella Desir. This is a memoir of a Black woman who wanted to change the visual that she considered to have been associated with the running community. So she started a running club in Harlem and then goes on to challenge everything from magazine covers to sponsorships and changing how brands represent runners and how running is portrayed in the wider community. This one was very inspiring and made me want to go do some big things as well. I really enjoyed what the author had to say about history. She has Caribbean roots. Her father is from Haiti. Maybe that's why I connected with this book and her story. It felt so authentic. It felt so uplifting. It felt so inspiring. There were points where it was sad because she comments on instances of white supremacy and racism and prejudice that people have faced surrounding running. But it's also, like I said, very inspiring and hopeful. She also offers the readers a springboard for change and gives us kind of tips on how to change our world if we want to. So I really, really enjoyed this. Those are the books that I read in March. These are other books that I am carrying over into April. If you've been watching some of my content, you may have seen me mention some of these books and you may be wondering how come they didn't appear in that wrap up. That's because I haven't finished them yet. So I'll be continuing with that and that and that one and that one and that one, and maybe even this one. So these are the books that I finished in March. Would love to chat with you in the comments. Let me know if you've read them or if you're going to read them now because I said so. Let's chat in the comments, and until we come back for another video, happy reading.